In Essential Task 7.6, we are going to talk about a concept known as observational learning. I have an H up here, but honestly, this could be held vertically as well. It's only 2 boxes. I just prefer horizontal concept maps. As you can see here, it's only these 2 boxes right on top of each other. So horizontal, vertical, both works perfectly fine today. I will allow you to pause the video here, copy down the portion in yellow before getting into the concept of observational learning. So the term observational learning, what it is presented on the AP exam as that term, is easy to work with. The area of confusion that students typically encounter is when the AP exam chooses to use some of the synonyms. So the AKAs here are actually quite important, whether it's social learning theory, social cognitive theory, or vicarious learning. If the College Board uses any of those 3 terms, they're referencing essentially the exact same concept. So observational learning, a term that sort of by name is easy to guess, would also translate to terms like vicarious learning, which you certainly may not have seen before. So regardless of how we refer to this concept, it all relates to the same premise, that individuals, at least according to this concept, learn through imitation of a model. Now, what that means is you have an individual who observes and then imitates, observes and then imitates, specifically modeling their behavior after whether or not the teacher or the coach or the instructor gained reinforcement for the behavior that's being observed, or on the other hand, gained punishment. Now, what that typically means is if you have a basketball coach who demonstrates proper technique when shooting a 3-pointer and actually gets the 3-pointer in relatively consistently, you are able to observe that that individual is being reinforced for the correct technique. And now you yourself, after observing the correct technique and also observing that it works, the positive reinforcement of scoring, is now going to choose to imitate to the best of your ability the technique in which you observe. That process of observing and then imitating is the key to observational learning. If this is an FRQ bullet, I must see those 2 terms, observation and imitation. This cannot simply just be defined as learning by observing. That's in and of itself not crystal clear. Are you learning by observing when you're sitting in class listening to notes? Not exactly, but that term observing is a little open-ended. Now, when you say observing and then imitating, it is crystal clear what you're talking about when those 2 words are combined in an FRQ. That process of taking information in through observation and then imitating that behavior to the best of your ability is called modeling. Typically, we do a lot of in-person modeling, whether that's in a math class when the teacher models how to do a problem, whether that's a basketball coach modeling proper technique, whether that's a dance coach modeling proper technique, or alternatively, virtual models. I know I personally do quite a bit of cooking by looking online and watching, step-by-step instructions over YouTube. Well, that is the same as modeling. It's not quite the in-person technique that you might be accustomed to, but that also works. So there are such things as virtual models as well. YouTube how-to videos and virtually everything on YouTube in and of itself can be considered virtual modeling. The term vicarious, I think we need to talk about just a little bit more. You may have heard in another context the phenomenon known as vicarious, or living vicariously through somebody else. That is essentially the idea of experiencing the consequences of another person's behavior by just observing. What that essentially means is, you or one of your friends might be in the middle of a big championship game and that person might win. So your best friend wins the championship game. And you yourself might not have played, you may not have taken the field, but you yourself feel really excited because your friend has experienced reinforcement. And then you think to yourself, wow, what did that person do to experience that great excitement? I now, having watched and observed that person experience that great sense of accomplishment, I am now going to do the best that I can to imitate that behavior, perhaps in preparation and training, so that I too someday can experience that great excitement. The same is also true for punishment, though. Perhaps you're in a classroom and a student talks out of turn, and it's perhaps early in the school year, and the teacher scolds that student, punishes that student very clearly in front of the class. Well, now you yourself, having sat in that classroom, experienced vicarious punishment. You didn't yourself experience the punishment, but you observed somebody experience the punishment. And now you know not to replicate that same behavior in the future because you experienced the punishment, not directly, but through what's called vicarious punishment. The key psychologist responsible for studying observational learning and then all the various synonyms, social learning, social cognitive learning, vicarious learning, is a gentleman named Albert Bandura. Bandura is going to get a green key psychologist icon. The mnemonic associated with his last name is Bobo Bandura. It'll make a lot of sense in just a little bit where that mnemonic is coming from. What Bandura found is that Participant children saw an increase in aggression towards what was called the Bobo punching doll when they observed adults model aggression. Now, what that means is, in the context of the study, children watched and observed a video of an adult beating the Bobo doll, this punching doll that you can see in the top right corner. And I'm talking about punching it, kicking it, throwing it, grabbing toys and flinging at it, being aggressive towards this Bobo doll. And then that child, after observing it through a video, were placed into the exact same room and then observed to see whether or not that child would model the aggression that they saw previously in the video. Well, children that observed an adult act out an aggression towards the Bobo doll were more likely to they themselves act out aggressively towards the Bobo doll when they were placed into that room alone, relative to the control group, which did not watch that video, or in some cases even watched a video which the adult was not aggressive. When those children who did not watch aggression prior to entering the room were placed into that room, their levels of aggression were much, much lower. What Bandera indicated was children were observing the aggression and then imitating the aggression, a clear indication that those children were exhibiting observational learning or the concept of modeling. And it was really clear when you look at some of the groups. Groups that were exposed to aggression, groups that saw the aggressive video prior to entering the room, you'll notice their frequency of aggression was significantly higher. That's what these first two columns indicate, than the non-aggression group or the control group. So there were essentially three different groups. Watched an aggressive video, watched a non-aggressive video, or were just placed into the room without ever watching anything. As you can clearly see, the numbers in the two columns furthest to the left, the participants which watched the aggression video, were much higher than any of the other conditions. You should also note that you can, by looking at these, denote the gender of the model. So what this means is a female model, so a female video, a video with a female adult, and then a video with a male adult, a video with a female adult, and then a video with a male adult. That's what the distinction means here, where it says F model. The subjects are the young children. So these are the children. So male children, when they watched a female act aggressively, there were about 12.4 instances of aggression when they were placed into the room. But even more surprisingly, when they watched a male in the video act aggressively, that spiked all the way up to 25.8. So the condition that yielded the highest degree of aggression were male children watching a male model in the video. The final thing to denote is, as exhibited as just a moment ago, the average or the mean was much, much higher after an aggressive model. So that's the first two columns over here on the left. I would watch the entirety of the clip attached here at the bottom. It's really quite a profound clip to watch.